I think one of the most interesting things about how they did it with Chadwick and with the Black Panther in this movie was they basically just said they're the same thing. They're the same person. They separated that line of Chadwick Boseman just being an actor playing the Black Panther to no, Chadwick Boseman was the Black Panther, and that's it.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast spoiler-filled discussion of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me is a very excited panel to dive into everything Wakanda Forever and the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. Of course, we have Anthony.
Hello, everyone.
We have Shahbaz.
Bonjour, everybody.
Oh. And making their debut on the movie podcast is someone who we've wanted to work with for such a long time. They are one of the busiest and the best in the biz. Please welcome Camille Salazar Hadaway. How are you, Camille?
Hello, everyone. I felt like I should have said that in another language because, Shay just threw in bonjour. I'm like, oh, wow, fancy. I'm doing really well. I am so excited to be joining you three. I just love what the movie podcast has been doing, what you three have brought to it, and just seeing your growth over, how long has it been? I feel like I've been watching you forever. This is how much you're a part of my life now.
Damn, it's been going into February. It's going to be 4 years.
Wow.
Which is wild. Yeah. It goes by very, very quickly.
Time really flies.
Congratulations to you three for everything you've accomplished over 4 years. I'm just so happy to finally be here sitting with you.
Thank you.
No, we're happy to have you. Now I want to just ask the group. I'm going to start with Anthony. How are you all doing today? How are you all feeling? It's Wakanda Forever opening weekend. Anthony, where are you at right now?
I'm just chilling. I'm living my life right now. I haven't seen it yet again, so I watched it when we watched it 3 weeks ago. But I haven't watched it again. I just want to kind of let the rush go through and let people the general audience go and enjoy it, and then I'll probably watch it sometime in the coming week again because I remember it. I see it in my head, but I just need to kind of go back and focus on certain points that I want to remember more, and specifically underwater sequences with Namor and stuff like that. But it's just been a crazy week. We've been busy with the show. We had the menu review come out. We had Mythic Quest. We have interviews that are coming out next week. So it's just been constantly working and editing and doing a bunch of movie podcasts.
It's been busy. It's been very busy for sure. But I'm excited for us to be able to, re-engage some of your memory from the larger film once we kind of dive into everything. Shay, how are you doing?
Doing great. I mean, we went to go watch it opening night again, and it's fresh in my mind. My tears have dried up finally, so I'm feeling a lot better about it. And I know we don't talk about the weather here, but I feel like it is appropriate to quickly discuss the pending snow that we're about to be dealing with here in Southern Ontario. Luckily, right now, it is kind of dry outside, but I have been seeing people's stories on Instagram of just snowmen being built, and I'm like, what part of the town are you living in? What's going on? Camille, are you a snow person?
I snowboard, so yeah, I love snow. However, being on the outskirts of Toronto, a little north of the city, every time I visit the city, I am a little bit sad when it's snowing because you deal with the slush. The ugliness of the snow is very apparent in the city just because of all the traffic. So it's not as easy as I could hop into my car, turn on the heat, turn on some Mariah, All I Want for Christmas, and then drive to a ski hill, right?
Right. Yeah. I think Toronto is the only place where it actually just snows gray snow from the beginning. It comes down gray and it just stays that way.
Don't worry. We have Mariah to get us through. Just keep pumping that song out.
It's true. Now, Camille, for those of us who are not as lucky to know who you are, please take the floor. Let the audience know who you are, how you're doing, and what you're all about.
Oh, wow. You're so nice. Lucky. You're so nice. I am Camille Salazar Hadaway, as the group announced me. I am a host in gaming and esports, 2021 Esports Host of the Year from the Canadian Video Games Awards. My background comes from very heavily covering video games media. That's kind of where I started out for blogs, and then from there working with companies like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo to host for them. I was on an esports and gaming show for 4 years. And then since then, I've been working with Ubisoft as their host for season reveals for Rainbow Six Siege, NASCAR for their eNASCAR iRacing Coca-Cola series, as well as like a whole bunch of other things. But at the heart of it, I do love to geek out on a lot of things. So if you catch up with me, you probably will find a lot of anime memes, as well as Star Trek, and like obviously MCU. I mean, who's not a fan of the MCU? So I just love having conversations with people about their theories, whether it be games, whether it be movies or fandom, any type of fandom, and just going from there. So that's kind
I
of
love it.
who I am in a nutshell.
That's awesome. We're so excited to dive into everything Wakanda Forever today with you. So thank you again once for joining us. We're going to have a great time. But as always, you could catch a brand new episode of the Movie Podcast every single Monday. And watch out throughout the week for our reviews and interviews and all the latest movies and series. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd at the Movie Podcast. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment below what you thought of the film. And of course, join our Discord. We're having some great conversations in there. Episodes of the Movie Podcast may end, but the conversation doesn't have to stop. Shay, you put out a question this week. What was the question of the week that you dropped in our Discord?
This one was about movie scores, and I think it was kind of hitting me the most because of the fact that Wakanda Forever has a phenomenal score, which I'm sure we're going to dive into in a bit. It's such a progression from the first movie, so I wanted to see, like, I know Daniel, you and I and Anthony, we already we listen to movie scores on our drives. Even Camille, do you ever listen to movie scores when you're just driving around or doing work at home?
Honestly, I think I used to. Like, I always used to be on Rotten Tomatoes, like when movies would release coming close to opening weekend. But I think through my work in gaming and how scores work in gaming, I just stopped paying attention to that because I started to review myself. And then it's a good gauge to see like where everyone's at, but then just you get busy and caught up all in it. So I like to go in fresh without knowing any scores, and then maybe after I'll pay attention. So like for Wakanda Forever, before watching it, I like did not look up any scores. I was listening to some like overarching reviews, like your thoughts here actually on the movie podcast. But then I didn't want to get into scoring it because sometimes it's just kind of like it's supposed to set a tone, but I feel like everyone could score differently. And it's also like how you view the movie, especially when it comes to superhero movies. I feel like everyone holds it up to a pedestal because there's a certain, I guess, pattern that superhero movies are supposed to go to. And I feel like, especially in the MCU right now, we're going through this time where they're very explorative in the type of movies they're putting out. They're exploring different genres. So I don't want someone's score of what they think, a Black Panther movie or an Avengers movie should be to then dictate what I should think going into a movie, if that makes sense.
No,
Long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
no, totally makes sense. A lot of people kind of gave similar answers, like, do they care about if the movie gets a certain rating anywhere else? Would they still go watch it if their favorite actor is in it? So there's a lot of those things that kind of play into it. As a bit of a treat for this week's question, I will be asking, in terms of the music and the soundtrack in the movie, what do you think about that? And I'm curious what answers we're gonna get. I personally, whenever I'm working at home, I'll throw on the entire soundtrack of a movie, whether it's the music from the movie that the artists have made or whether it's the composer. So I'm excited to get into that question this week. But Daniel, I know that you're a man of music. You love how the music, the soundtracks are for these movies. Do you listen to them? I know that. Anthony, do you listen to the music from the movie after you're done?
Why you ask me that, man? Of course I do. You know that.
I know, but I wanted to throw it out there. I wanted to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like the score of like the musical number of the soundtrack, we'll say, of a movie is instrumental to the success of that film for me. Interstellar being one of them. There hasn't been a bad musical score that I've listened to, other than like maybe music that was picked from different artists and built an album around. But a lot of times, like, musical scores for movies are fantastic, and it just brings you back to a memory of that film. That whole, especially for instance, Batman. What was it, Molasses? You play that while you're driving, you feel like you're in the tumbler, right? So it's just it's a memory that it's an unlockable memory that you can always achieve when you're driving. But yeah, musical scores are huge. Sometimes they're, La La Land, especially the opening sequence of La La Land where you're stuck in traffic. You would play that song,
And then you just get out of your car and you start dancing. Exactly.
and then people
As
are
one
like,
does,
"You're causing
yeah.
more
As one
traffic."
does, yeah.
But
Yeah.
things like that, they're
It's-
just
That's why there's
cool.
always traffic in Toronto, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you say that there really aren't bad, musical like elements to movies. It's just that sometimes can be forgettable ones, but there's usually never bad ones. Camille, for yourself, do you ever find yourself just popping on your headphones, listening to the soundtrack of a film after it's complete or before it even comes out?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I got a feeling after watching Guardians, I would wake up to that song just because it put me in that mood. But yeah, like I feel like it brings back those memories of the films, the emotions that you want to feel, and music has just a great way to do that. And the pairing of the two, it just creates those visuals that makes you want to run back to the theater and watch the movie again.
Definitely. So please, if you have an answer for this question, join our Discord. We'd love to have you. We love talking about movies and shows and, of course, gaming. We have our Wakanda Forever spoiler channel open now, too. So if you want to jump in there and we'll talk about the movie, we'll give our thoughts. And, of course, please listen to this episode to the very end so you could hear what we think of it, and we'll keep the conversation going. And as always, if you like what we're doing here on the Movie Podcast, please drop us 5 stars on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, right into the show at hello@themoviepodcast.ca. We'd love to hear from you, and we want to keep doing what we're doing. We love doing this. So thank you for supporting our show. Camille, you have not given us your thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. We were lucky enough to watch it and give our spoiler-free review. But please, we'd love for you to kick us off with your spoiler-filled, just overarching thoughts on the film. And then we're going to kind of open up the conversation from there. And Shay has some box office for us too, which we'll talk about since those numbers are coming out. But Camille, what did you think of Black Panther Wakanda Forever?
Oh man, like you just asking me that question, I start to get emotional again. Oh my gosh. But I think it's a superhero movie. Actually, you know what? It's a movie like no other that really pays tribute to an individual in a way that I have never seen before, that makes such an impact to the audience watching throughout the movie. I think sometimes when we think of movies that are paying tribute to someone, you usually have that at the beginning or at the end most of the time. But sitting through Black Panther Wakanda Forever, throughout the movie, as soon as the opening credits roll and you are met with the chaos that's happening with Shuri trying to save her brother, it's a completely uninterrupted shot, and it just makes it so, that feeling that it is so raw, right? It took me back to, obviously, I wasn't caught up in that chaos, but as a fan, hearing and the confusion, hearing that Chadwick Boseman, he passed away, and everyone's trying to, I was actually with a group of my friends, and we're just in shock in that moment. It brought back those feelings of just, I think, what the world was feeling when they heard the news. So it mirrored that, to then going into Shuri's journey of trying to figure out what to do, right? Because when you look at it, the movie is, yes, about losing the Black Panther, but it's more about how you deal with grief. And it isn't till the very end that Shuri figures out how to deal with grief when she decides not to kill Namor, right? But sitting in all those moments, even, oh my gosh, Angela Bassett and her performance, like, there's so many amazing performances in this film that is women-led, a women-led cast, right? By the way, that I think it's just a force to be reckoned with. When I think of this movie, I don't think superhero movie. I think of it as kind of therapy. If you've ever dealt with grief, if you've ever, had these questions about why, dealing with the why, but then understanding that the end of life is inevitable, right? We all will lose someone if we haven't already. And how are you going to deal with that is a better question. How are you going to live on and have their legacy remembered through the actions you take? It made me cry. It made me laugh. There was really clever writing. M'Baku was hilarious. Toronto actor, by the way. So it's just like there's so many great things in the film that I can't wait to dive more deeply into it with you. But overall, it's just an amazing film. Not a superhero film. It's an amazing film that I truly think the performances are Oscar worthy.
I love, I think one of the first things you mentioned in that, was Shuri and Letitia Wright and dealing with the grief in this film. And this film wastes no time. Wakanda Forever wastes no time putting you into that situation, right? Like, we're starting on a black screen. We hear Shuri say, like, praying to Boss, like saying, like, to protect her brother, to help her find what she needs. And then, like you said, Camille, like, it is a one shot, it's one take shot. Like, there's no camera cuts, where you're just feeling the stress of wanting Shuri to find a way to save her brother. And I think going into this movie, we were all wondering, okay, how are they going to show, T'Challa passing? Like, how are we going to deal with that? How he passes isn't, I think, what's important. It's how we deal with it afterwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this movie does such a good job of just putting you in that situation right away and making you feel that fear and grief and that stress throughout. Because like you said, I remember when we all found out about Chadwick's passing, and we were just trying to process that and figure it out. And the beginning of this film really, brought back that panic. And it's amazing to see throughout the course of this film, we see grief being a huge component of the storytelling, and Shuri evolving from the comedic relief in the first film and in Infinity War to now being that carrying the baton of grief throughout this film, like, for the audience.
Can I just add to that? I think there's so much power in this film in silence. Ryan Coogler really does an amazing job in making us forget that we're watching an Avengers movie, other than like the amazing suits and fight scenes. But, like you said, we went in trying to figure out how they will reconstruct the Black Panther, what happened with the death of Chadwick, and how they'll explain that, and where the mantle of the Black Panther will go. We had all these questions in terms of what that meant for the MCU. Immediately, that opening scene, when you see the Marvel credit roll, and it's in just dead silence, and it's just all these amazing, beautiful images of Chadwick, all of that thought goes out the window. You forget that you have those questions. And then the silence throughout the film, when it wants you to remember that why we're here, why Black Panther is so important to everyone, and what Chadwick brought to that character. There is no music behind that. I know we talked about music earlier, but there is no music behind those moments. And they just hit so much harder. Everyone in the theater was crying. It was so emotional in those moments that, at the end of it, when it came to the end of the movie, usually I'm sticking around for an end credit scene. And I was sticking around to dry my eyes because I couldn't stop crying. And I actually was met with no end credit scene, and happy that they didn't do that. As a fan that likes to theorize about what's next in the MCU.
I love that. Anthony, jump on in. What was how are you feeling after that opening sequence, and then I guess leading to the funeral and seeing the celebration of obviously of T'Challa's life and also Chadwick's life? What was your feelings coming out of that moment?
It brought me back to literally the time we found out that he passed. Just the panic. I think when you're in a situation where you're about to lose someone, you definitely go into like this panic mode. How do I save them? How do I bring them back? How do I stop what's happening? And that's kind of like where I was at, where, in the years, in the past years, whenever I was in a situation where people have passed, there was always this, how do I bring them back? And that was like the fear and the emotional exhaustion that you see in Shuri's face. during that time, and how Ryan Coogler really, again, all that handheld work focusing on her, and like it's just one take going around and around until you see um, Angela Bassett show up and say he's passed. There was a lot of talk for us going in, figuring out um, how are they going to address his death. And I think how Ryan did it, we all know how Chadwick passed. We all know that it was this terrible disease that's killed him. Do we really have to stay on that forever? And I think a lot of people wanted to know, oh, why why didn't they show him dying, or why didn't they have like some sort of explanation of what killed him? We know how he passed. We need to figure out how we kind of celebrate his death, because that's the next step, is celebrating what's happened with T'Challa and going on and getting over that grief of his passing. And I think that's what really kind of, with African cultures, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, it always is, the death after is always a celebration, because our time here on earth is always like that middle plane. Everything we go to is something much better. And I think that's what they really focus on, which was beautiful. And you see it. And the first time I watched it, I thought it was kind of short. That's that the funeral of T'Challa. But I think looking back at it, I think we didn't really need to linger too much on it. It's what comes next. And it was interesting to see Shuri, she really focuses on the science, right? Like science is a big part of her life. And she's kind of like in this middle zone of, do I believe that my brother's gone on to something more beautiful than what I've experienced, or is he just dead? Is he gone? And there is that huge science versus religion, or science versus the afterlife type of thing. And that was interesting, because the mother was that presence of spirituality and everything that kind of goes after this, very kind of Lion King. Like what you experience now is going to only be so much better once you've gone from this life. um and her dealing with that, and I think you see that throughout the whole movie, where she's battling like, am I going to be this spirituality of the Black Panther, or am I going to still be this science, because science doesn't know what's happened after the afterlife. That's one thing they cannot ever figure out. So it's like, how am I going to balance both? But yeah, the passing of T'Challa, or Chadwick Boseman, I think it was honoring Chadwick Boseman. I don't think for the family to really like, oh, he passed away of something else. Like the whole world knows, because he's such a
Right. Or in
celebrated
battle
actor.
too was another thing, right? That people are like, "Oh, I wish we saw him like pass away in battle or something like that." But like there's also you can, cuz there's something about, you know, passing away from something that you can't stop,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
right?
yeah, no, go ahead, Dan. I think it
No, that's it,
humanizes.
please.
Yeah, it humanizes superheroes, right? Like we think they're so away from any. They're able to protect everyone, and everything around them is pretty much perfect, besides Secret Invasion and all. But I think what it really does is just show that yeah, they could have illnesses that are unexplained, because we do look at them as superheroes, so we may not understand what it was that killed them. There may not be a fix, even with an advanced country like Wakanda having everything at their disposal. But sometimes these things happen, right? They are also kind of can be a victim of the unexplained, that otherness that we don't understand as humans, as people, right? That there are no answers for.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about how they did it with Chadwick and with the Black Panther in this movie was they basically just said they're the same thing. They're the same person. They separated that line of Chadwick Boseman just being an actor playing the Black Panther to no, Chadwick Boseman was the Black Panther, and that's it. You have now given us that complete circle. We've finished it, and the beauty behind it is it's now separated that line for anyone who wants to grow up to to do good in this world. They can now see that, hey, it wasn't just Chadwick reading a script. That was Chadwick. That's who he was. He was that person. And to start off the movie that way, it it immediately just thrusts you into this emotional landscape that you weren't really expecting, and making it that one shot that you mentioned, Camille, makes it that much more stressful, because you know what's going to happen. Even though
Yeah.
I know that Chadwick's not making out of the scene, I still kept just holding onto my armrest, going, maybe there's a way that we can kind of get through this. Maybe there's a light at the end of this tunnel. But the beauty of it is that it, again, like I said, it creates this one person. It's no longer two separate entities. We're now seeing Chadwick and Black Panther as one person.
It's interesting seeing the course that this movie takes after this, because after after T'Challa's passing and we have the funeral celebration, we cut to a year later, and again, one of the many scenes where Angela Bassett is just making us just get blown away in our seats by her performance. That, when she is in front of like the UN talking and just like saying like, she like, we know, like, what you're all saying about us in Wakanda. And just that performance intercut with the sequence on that boat.
Yeah.
And then you have, Ludwig's score coming in for the Dora Milaje. And it's one of those scenes that like I keep thinking about, and that's one of the songs I keep listening to on the album too, where it's just like when you see like Okoye coming out of that, that like
the vault,
door.
I guess it's a vault. Yeah.
And I was just goosebumps, and then it just goes
you hear
off,
the
and then,
chant of the oh, so
yeah,
good.
it's so badass. And then Angela Bassett, I mean, throughout this movie, we obviously we've spoken about her already, but what a performance throughout this film. She was incredible in the first film, but she commands the screen. Like, she is incredible.
What I really liked about that sequence was it matured Black Panther beyond just being Black Panther. It became like this political thriller, in the sense that there is a lot of, these are the little stories that you need to build the MCU, because politics is a huge part of it. World powers are a huge part of it. And Queen Ramonda, being her presence in that, I think it's the UN, and she's just telling the world how you feel about us, and then intersecting that with the French trying to steal or infiltrate vibranium depository. It's great, because you need those mature storylines to make this more realistic, in the sense, for the average audience. What is going to get the 50-year-old who doesn't watch any Marvel stories to really kind of get into this Marvel universe? Oh, we're going to add like a Bourne or political thriller, a story that they might have seen or watched in the 90s. We're going to intersect it with this Marvel universe, which works really well. And it reminded me of Winter Soldier, like these little stories that work well in this universe.
Winter Soldier is like my number one, top 3 MCU movies.
Absolutely.
Fight me on it. But going in, we know what's coming ahead. Like, so this is my MCU nerd coming out. We know Secret Invasion is happening, right? This is now setting up for me as like looking to Wakanda Forever as like an MCU film, what that means for the future after the tears of like watching it. This means to me the US is becoming the main villain. We have now, we know the Thunderbolts are coming. We know that they've been leading these attacks, or trying to get vibranium as well. So they're not looking so well as the heroes. It kind of takes me back to like Civil War as well, and the questions around the superheroes and what they actually bring to these countries. And I think now the countries are like, okay, like it's time for us to rise back to power, and this, for the states especially. So I think that's going to make a very interesting story for some of these characters we might have seen in Wakanda Forever, and who may be a Skrull. That's all.
Yeah,
someone's a Skrull in here. I feel like
I think it's Richard
Skrulls.
Schiff.
Yeah,
I think Richard Schiff's character, who again, shout out to Richard Schiff as Odin in God of War Ragnarok, because he's so good in it. But he's a new character that we're seeing introduced in this film. I think he's the Secretary of State.
It looks like it,
right?
Yeah.
So like he's there in that room. He doesn't have a lot to do in this film, but he definitely feels like, okay, you're going to be coming back later. Like, we're going to be
him and Harrison
seeing
Ford.
you a lot. And because we know Secret Invasion's coming, we know Armor Wars is coming, and a big part of this film is that vibranium is it's unleashed on the world now. Like, we know that it's not the only place that it's not just in Wakanda. We know that there was another meteorite, and that's how Talokan has it. And I was getting vibes of even Iron Man 2, because Iron Man 2 deals with, like this, like the cat's out of the bag, like an Iron Man suit exists. Now other countries are going to want to try and, and replicate and do this and have their own. And we have a great moment with Julie Louis-Dreyfus's character, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who, like
Bless
when
you.
Martin, when thank you, when Everett Ross like tells her like, yeah, like, could you imagine what the US would be like if they had the only vibranium in the world? And she's like, I dream of it. And I was like, damn, like, because that's how each country would be if they had access to vibranium, right? So it was really cool seeing, that political dynamic unfolding throughout this.
Do we think she's a Skrull?
Ah, man, I wonder. I really wonder.
Anyone is at this point. That's
I know,
that's
right?
that's the safest
Everyone's
way
a
to say
Skrull.
it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you think it's gonna lead up to a situation where adamantium becomes, because adamantium is indestructible as well, because there's this whole thing of vibranium being this metal so precious, and then we lead to adamantium being designed, which then leads to the X-Men, and it leads to, like these men.
I like it.
I was growing up, I always knew adamantium to be the strongest. Vibranium was huge for the MCU because that's the metal that they can showcase in films. Adamantium wasn't, because it was part of the X-Men. So I'm just curious how that metal becomes part of it. I know we're talking about metals like we're just scientists.
Let me get my
geologists all of a sudden. Yeah.
No, but that's a good point, though, because, I mean, we've seen the fallout in a lot of MCU films and shows about recreating the super soldier serum, right? Like the Hulk's involved with that. Falcon and Winter Soldier dealt with that. And what, adamantium could maybe be in the MCU, something that, different, labs were maybe trying to recreate vibranium, and they created that. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out. I don't know.
Hey,
Kevin Feige, call
pick
me.
them up.
What's
Pick up
up?
all these ideas. But let's talk about it. The huge cat is out of the bag. We knew it was coming. There's officially mutants in the MCU with Namor, the first mutant, Marvel mutant. This is insane. I love how they kind of went. Firstly, oh my god, amazing performance. But I love how they explain Namor's character and how his origins work through the MCU, being highly inspired by Mayan lore, right? Or Mayan, history, right? And then understanding that there is so much hate Namor has for the surface world that
no love,
Namor, no love. But I mean, like, I could actually see him, and I would love to see him maybe become one of the bigger villains in the MCU. I could totally see him alongside Kang.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tenoch's his performance is so heartbreaking, because you have this anti-hero character who, within the span of 2.5 hours, really has given us a complete arc. He brings it all, and the fact that this is one of his first films, never really swam before, I would not have believed any of that after seeing this performance. I'm like, oh, this guy's been in the biz for forever, but he embodied that character, and I'm so excited for us to just continue to see him down the road, whether it comes into something Disney Plus, because I know they've always talked about kind of expanding the world of Wakanda on Disney Plus. Like, do they incorporate it that way? How do we kind of get more of Namor? I don't know. I really want to see it. This movie really does, like Daniel, as you mentioned, it's like Iron Man 2, right? Like, people are learning from their mistakes. There's a direct correlation to the previous film. This movie really has that connection, because Namor's character doesn't just kind of just show up out of the blue and be like, well, I'm pissed. It's a direct connection to the first film, which makes that DNA seem so much more entangled than you expect it to. And Tenoch and his whole crew, like we had, Mabella and Alex as well. Like, oh my God, they are so damn good in this movie, and they're scary. You get this, like, are they from an Avatar film? Like, what's going on here? They're so blue, living in the water.
Oh my gosh, and they did that so well, where it's underwater, they look completely normal, and then when they're out of the water, they're blue. And the designs of them, I was just in so much awe for all of them. Like, and they really, because, okay, let's face it, okay, I am a huge comic book fan, but Namor was kind of made into a joke, okay? Kind of along the lines of Aquaman. It was kind of seen as, oh, just another like fish hero that like is underwater, but they made him so menacing, like just because he borderlines this like friendliness, but then also telling you what's up and not afraid to stare you in the eye and say, I will kill you. But hey, let me show you my world. Let me show you my people.
Yeah.
Let me see you the beauty of it. That is the scariest thing. It kind of gives me that Thanos vibe with that Thanos is he was kind of right? But then he just kind of took it too far, right? So I could
Right.
totally see. I think that's what makes these villains so interesting, because they're not complete villains. Really, Namor's there to protect his people, and he has been burned really horribly by the surface world.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting about him, is that he is someone at the, like you said, Camille and Shay, like he is someone at the very first and foremost, he is all about protecting his people. So he sees what T'Challa and what they did in the first Black Panther film at the very end of opening up Wakanda to the worlds. By opening up Wakanda, you've also made Talokan vulnerable, right? And I love something that we spoke about in our spoiler-free review, is that Namor he is so methodical in what he's doing, and we see that in his little monologue at the end of the film, where Wakanda has a target on their back now. We know that the US wants to invade Wakanda, and now Wakanda is going to look to Talokan as an ally. So we're really leading to tensions rising across the world, and we're going to have these two superpowers with Wakanda and Talokan looking like they're going to be teaming up, and Talokan having the ultimate, kind of higher ground on them. I'm just curious, as we go down the road, and of course larger MCU things, like where's Latveria in all of this? What's Doctor Doom up to? Like, I'm just
The
curious
Eternals.
the Eternals, like where are all these other big players, in the grand scheme of things now, which is really going to be interesting. And it's really like, you don't think there's a lot of world building in this film, because it very much is a film about grief, but it's these little moments that I think that we could really expand on, these small little scenes to to really, I think, set up the next 5, 6, 10 years of
That
the MCU.
that intro to Namor, that sequence in the water that we've talked about in our original review, is one of the scariest moments in a Marvel film. Like, it's haunting with the music, and then all of a sudden you're seeing people jump off the boat without their
Oh my
own,
God.
without their own mind kind of at play here. And the reason why this is all happening is because we're getting our almost like our Civil War introduction to Spider-Man that we did. We're getting that to Riri Williams now. We're getting that to Ironheart. We're jumping over to MIT to figure out what's happening. And I think, I keep seeing this on Twitter, and I wonder how it's actually going to play out, if it even does. But if we're looking at this movie 1 year later at MIT, is Zendaya there? Is MJ there? Is Nate? Is who's there right now?
Or Ned.
Ned. Sorry, Ned. I don't know why I said
Yeah.
Nate. Is Ned there? Nate is just a friend of ours, probably.
Yeah.
Is Ned there?
Nate's Ned's cousin.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. That's right. So is Ned there, or MJ there? What's going on? Like, is this world expanding even further? Are we going to see more repercussions? But that introduction to Riri was so cool, because I don't know too much about Ironheart, but that second, the vibe that I got was Peter Parker meets Tony Stark right away, and it
Yeah.
totally blended in.
She's kind of like well, in the comics she's his protege, right? So it's interesting how they brought her, and like the first scene you see of her, she's swindling, or like not really swindling, but she's trying to get money from this guy for doing his homework, and like already in his phone, unlocking his phone, trying to transfer her money. I think that just shows also the dynamic of, there's more throughout the film. We learn that something happened with her father, right? Which is
Yep.
why she has this car that she doesn't like to touch. So I'm guessing her father might have passed away. Just as how she speaks about him. I don't know. I don't remember her revealing that, but I think based on how she's talking about him, he's passed away. And it seems like she's close to her mother, because she's like, can I call my mother? Like, can I at least call home? Right. So I think there's maybe a huge dynamic between maybe her family life and where she is now. a while ago we saw Tony actually introduce, I think how they're doing it is Tony, she was a part of that MIT grant that Tony Stark revealed that he was giving in Iron Man. And she probably was one of the recipients. So maybe though, because I mean, if she is a scientist that the US government hired to create or like stole her schematics to create of her this vibranium machine, I'm pretty sure Iron Man before he passed away knew of her if she was building cars or building machines at 3 years old. So there might have been a deeper relationship between her and Tony Stark that will give more background when her series comes out.
And she even says like, "Hey, people have caught me on YouTube, flying around in this thing," and that immediately took me back to when Peter was being caught on YouTube, and that's how Tony kind of found him. So you're right, Camille. Like he probably was on YouTube and was like, "Okay, I got these two people to worry about right now. I'm gonna go focus on him," and then her right after.
Actually,
that'd definitely
that'd be cool if we find out like she was actually reached out to the same time Peter Parker was, but no one. We just didn't see that, right?
Yeah, it's possible. And then also, it's probably Kamala Khan is probably the one on YouTube trying to find sightings of her, right? But it's funny because like you see that her schematics are Stark Tech schematics, right? So I'm curious, like, how did she get those? Is that something that did Tony make this available for people to look at, or is this something that was?
Did her dad potentially work for Stark Industries? That's the other thing I'm thinking of, because she doesn't go into detail about her dad. Like, I feel like if it was like someone disconnected, she would have just said, yeah, my dad passed away when I was younger or whatever. But it's kind of held to be a mystery when at the end of the movie, Shuri puts the car back, finds all the pieces, puts the car back together, and they have that quick exchange. And she's like, it was my dad's before. And they just kind of stare at each other. So I felt like there was something a little more there that we'll probably learn in Ironheart as to who her father was. Maybe this is a character that we've seen in prior Iron Man movies that we find out what happened to him afterwards.
Another thing, we get at the very beginning of the film, we notice someone who is not at T'Challa's funeral. It's Nakia, Lupita Nyong'o's character. We get introduced to her later on into this film. She's in Haiti. She is there with a school, and of course, this is our spoiler-filled discussion, so we'll be so open. We don't know it at the time, but we are introduced to a very young man who is there, who greets Queen Ramonda when she's there, and it's revealed in the mid-credit scene that that is the child that Nakia and T'Challa had together. And it was such a cool moment, especially watching the film for the second time and then seeing him there, and he's holding Angela Bassett's hand. I'm like, y'all know each other.
Yeah.
You definitely, like, she's met him before, and it was such a cool moment seeing it for the second time. Like, damn, like the legacy, even though T'Challa in this world has passed away, but his legacy lives on with like through his son and obviously through his sister. But it was just a cool thing to have introduced in this film.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on that until after I watched the movie, and then like people were like screen grabbing that scene when she's walking into the Haitian school, and then you see T'Challa there, T'Challa Jr. there.
T'Challa Jr. Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna say. But like that was so cool how they brought that in, and yeah, she did know, right? We learn from at the end that this was probably the thing that she was trying to tell, Shuri about this secret or something about T'Challa. Remember, but she gets cut off. Namor shows up and he's badass, and we all forget about what that was. And that's the thing. Like usually in movies, I feel like I'm sitting down and I'm just like, wait, what happened there? Wait, we're missing this. But I was so caught up. Like the movie does such a good job at engaging you that you completely forget for a second that she was actually going to tell Shuri something, because this badass character shows up and is just killing it on screen.
It's true. Now, I want us, now that we could talk spoiler free about this, I want us all to think about, not again, what's something that you think this movie maybe could have done better at? What's something that maybe didn't sit as well with us? But before we do that, I'm going to let us all think about it. I want to kick it to Shay. I want Shay to give us some box office information for this movie because, of course, this is opening weekend. I want to hear how this film did. Shay, kick it off, and then while we're all kind of thinking about some things that this film maybe could have been a bit more clear about, something that maybe didn't work as well as we wanted to work. But Shay, it's all yours.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that Marvel movies do really well at the box office, and
What?
November is an interesting month because we don't really get that many Marvel movies in November. I think the last biggest November box office release was Catching Fire, and that was ages ago. So now we're
Wow.
kind of getting, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which is the second biggest opening of 2022 at 180 million.
Wow.
Insane. That's
Wow.
just domestic because worldwide it did about 330. That's the fourth best opening for a solo MCU hero title movie. The 15th biggest opening. It's number 13 on the top 15. But more important that Ryan Coogler now has become the first Black director with 2 films in the top 15 biggest openings ever. He's the first solo director with back-to-back openings of $180 million. Coogler's first 4 films are all certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So, for the Black community, for Ryan Coogler, for everybody out there, it's possible. And he's clearly shown it, and he's paved the way. He has made one of the most personal and emotional, epic scaled kind of films. And I know that he wasn't also a swimmer before he kind of got in this movie, but he learned how to swim just to kind of get into the scenes with the actors. Because some directors may just kind of sit on the wayside and be like, I'll send my second unit guy to go into the water. But no, he really dove in, no pun intended, into this role. And my God, it shows. He's a brilliant director, and I can't wait to see more from him, whether it's outside of the MCU or inside the MCU.
I think what's so incredible about Ryan Coogler's body of work is that it always comes down to, I think, the people in his film, right? You look at Fruitvale Station, you look at Creed, you look at Black Panther, you look at everything that he's been part of, and it comes down just to let's have great characters in this film, right? And you look at the cast of characters that was introduced in the Black Panther in 2018, and I remember the theater popping off in Infinity War and in Endgame when they returned, because that's how much of a mark they left on us. And then to have that cast now take over in Wakanda Forever, and as Camille said, to have a Black-led female film, we don't see that ever, and to have it doing the numbers that it's doing it's pretty incredible.
I think the important thing that the first one did was, it brought so many people out to come celebrate, the first film. And I think one of the things that you kind of touched upon as well, both you and Camille, was that this was so female centric that the audience was 45% female that went to go watch this movie. That's huge.
Damn.
You don't really ever see that. So seeing seeing that's what exactly happened. Proof is right there. You just got to keep trying.
Yeah, and with movies, there's this whole really it's just like people believe that women-led movies, people of color-led movies do not do well at the box office. Black Panther has proven twice now that is a lie, as Maury would say. But it's true. Like there's just so much that we could do, and even like I was watching on TikTok. I mean, TikTok makes me laugh every single night. But there's these memes now of like what Black and Latin people coming out of these theaters are doing, and it is the symbols for both tribes, and it's create this whole culture around just cinema and with Black and Latin communities that cannot be untouched.
Yeah, I love that. Now, before we got to the box office, I did pose a question to the group. Anthony, I'm going to get you to start us off. Is there something in Black Panther Wakanda Forever that didn't, that you think could have been a bit more clear, a bit more better? Let's open it up, and I'm going to get you to start us off.
I still don't have an answer for you, truthfully. It's strange because the movie's, I'm not saying it's the greatest movie of all time or the greatest script of all time, but I think everything that was what we saw in that film played a huge part in the future of Black Panther as well as the future of the MCU. So I can't say, Everett and Val's sequences in that film don't need to be there. Sure, they don't, but it was nice to have because they build this huge, larger environment, especially where they're going with Secret Wars. and putting Val in this figurehead of, is she a villain? Is she not a villain? What's her actual motive in all this? The Namor sequences underwater were beautiful, but there could have been, I don't know, maybe it could have been grander. I don't know. I guess I expected that world to be much larger than it was. Maybe I didn't feel it. But again, that
I
I
think
think
they're holding back
they're
for
holding
sure. I
back
think
for
they're
sure.
definitely holding back on the larger Talokan worlds.
The idea of Tolokan invading Wakanda also didn't feel as big as might have read in the comics. But then again, that was just a message. It wasn't this, overtaking, I'm going to invade your country. It was, I'm going to send a couple of missiles to your country as a sign of,
Right.
don't mess with us. But like everything that we accomplished, or what we saw, or what Ryan accomplished in this film, I think it was all on point. There are a bit of CG mishaps here and there, but it's a long film. You feel it at certain points, but I think the overall feeling, because this is a tribute, this is also introducing new characters as well as progressing a character who we now know we have a new Black Panther, which is Shuri, and we also have a future Black Panther, which is Prince T'Challa. There's a lot at stake here, and there was also a lot of, it was 5 years, 6 years before the last one. So, and 5 years have already passed. Remember, Endgame, 5 years have passed. So it was really 10 years essentially of
It's
missing
been a
out
long
on
time.
this
Yeah, it's been a
on
long
this
time since
world.
we've been back with these characters.
So yeah, it's long, but I think it's well worth it. I think Ryan Coogler did a fantastic job of creating this MCU world that we kind of got lost in the past couple of weeks. I think it's just fantastic.
I love it. Camille, jump on in. Where's your head right now?
Anthony, you make so many good points. When I think of Namor and his people, but with the Black Panther comics, like that, they're huge like conflicts. It's like huge arc in the comics for them. I think I was expecting something bigger, but I think they're holding back for sure because we will get more. Um, and when we saw them, I feel like those moments just hit really hard and like made me want to know more. So I think that feeling of just wanting more is just the fact that they did it so well, and I want to see more of it. The CGI, I feel like there were a little bit of mishaps here there. Like, so for Riri's final suit, I wasn't too much of a fan of that design. It kind of just,
It's very Gundam looking.
yeah, it was kind of
Yeah.
Gundam, or even if you've seen any of like the I can't even remember the name of the show, but it's like one of the Avengers shows for like young kids. It kind of reminded me of the costumes there, or some of the toy designs there. So I wasn't too much a fan of that. I liked Riri's like kind of makeshift
The exoskeleton look.
because it
Yeah.
reminded me of like Iron Man's first suit, right? So
Mhm.
I preferred something that looked a little bit like that. Um when Shuri is underwater and in that breathing apparatus thing, I thought that it could have done a little bit of more CG work. The one that really stood out for me was Okoye's Midnight Angel suit. I was not a fan of that suit. However, if you do look in the comics at Midnight Angels, it is very heavily inspired of how the Midnight Angels look in the comics. Which, by the way, again, I think they're setting up, because I kind of just wanted to see Okoye in the Dora Milaje, like her outfit throughout the film. She's just so badass.
Right.
However, Okoye does join the Midnight Angels, and that does lead to the Midnight Angels coming together for a conflict with Doctor Doom, right? So this is maybe just what they're setting up. I would just love a redesign of what that suit looks like, because she's just awesome. I don't want to see her like masked up and wearing like just all covered. She's just so powerful when she
Yeah.
fights with her expressions, that it's just so clear, so good to see that. But other than that, like, I feel like when you're sitting down, you're getting ready to watch this movie, you cannot go into this movie expecting you're gonna get like just all fight scenes, because when you step back and look at it, there are good fight scenes, there's good action happening, but it's not like a Winter Soldier type where every other scene is a fight scene. There's a car chase. It is not going to be that. This is setting you on an emotional journey. It's going to make you laugh, cry, chuckle. You're going to feel everything that Ryan is trying to make you feel, and he hits on those moments so perfectly that by the time you walk out of the theater, you are going to feel so good that you watched that movie, that you were able to sit there and experience it with other people. Because for me, when I watched the first Black Panther movie, when you left the theater opening weekend, there was this feeling of we just experienced something historic um, in the world. And I feel like when I left the theater again this time, it's like we just experienced something that probably will never be able to be done this well in cinema ever again.
Right. Shay, jump on in.
A lot of the criticisms that you guys are bringing up are pretty much kind of where I'm at as well. Initially when we watched the film, I was like, okay, it was a little long, a little slow at some points. And, on the second rewatch, I got it. I get it. I understand why they needed to go down that way. I think for me, really, it is just those CG moments, especially Midnight Angels and, Riri Williams's Ironheart costume. I love the first one, like you mentioned, Camille, because not only did it feel like Iron Man's first suit, but it kind of gave me this like Sigourney Weaver and Aliens kind of vibe, like in her giant mech suit. And then I'm gonna sound like an old curmudgeon man here, where I miss the days of mechanical masks and costumes or physical masks. I feel like now with nanotechnology, the actor's really not wearing a mask, so it just goes and just kind of goes away off their face. But I miss when Iron Man's mask would open up all the way and like it would like collapse upon itself, because it kind of gave you that tactile feel that I feel like the Midnight Angels mask, it looks like it had it, but then it would just evaporate away from their face after a bit. So I'm like, oh, okay. I think those small touches to add that into the CG allow it to not feel like such a CG heavy costume. So I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to go back to that. I feel like now that nanotechnology is kind of out there in the MCU, they're totally cool with having absolutely no physical costume, just some tiny thing on them, and immediately it provides them that. But I think that was really it for me. It was minor CG moments here and there, some character designs, but it is what it is. I mean, they're pumping out all these movies and TV shows at the same time, so gotta cut slack somewhere.
But it's interesting though with the CG. Yeah, there are definitely some moments that stood out. But I think overall, when we look at the grand Phase 4 of this MCU, I think this film was the most consistent throughout. Where in previous films you're like, oh, that doesn't look too hot, or that doesn't look too great. Where this movie, I think, because so much of it looks like it was shot in practical locations, you feel like this is a real world that you're in. I think all of you. I think I agree with everything that you've said. I do wish that we got to see more of Talokan and learn more about Namora and Atuma, who were great. And I'm so glad we got to talk to them. But I really hope in future films and a series or wherever they go, we learn more about these characters, because like we were saying, Ryan Coogler does such an incredible job of creating these worlds that you want to learn more about all the characters. And I'm hoping in a future Wakanda series, we learn all about the different tribes. I want to learn about the Border Tribe and the River Tribe. Like, there are so many cool factions within Wakanda itself. And I'm hoping with whatever happens in the future with Namor and Talokan, we also get that. Anthony.
Yeah, I just want to say that how they really did the whole story with Namor and him coming from, we'll say, the Mayan or a Latino based community, in separating themselves from Atlantis, because I know Atlantis was Submariner's world, and also separating themselves from Aquaman, which was DC's world. They didn't want to confuse people or confuse the audience. Why are there two types of Aquamen in this superhero cinematic world that we're in right now? I thought they did a fantastic job. They also capitalized on a market like the Latin market to really focus on them, because there's no representation right now for a very long time for them. So I think this is a huge aspect. I think they got two communities right now that are huge in the world of the MCU, and they really, again, this is Ryan Coogler putting in motion a future that we get to see more of this representation. We had women representation, we had cultural representation, as well as a political thriller, as well as new enemies. It's like there's so much that we can add to this story that it's like, holy shit, this is phenomenal. Like no one can really do this right now and come across it. And I think Ryan Coogler, because of where he comes from and the the time period he was born in and understanding where the world is right now, he built a beautiful world.
One thing the last thing I want to talk about with this film, something that we have not touched on yet, Michael B. Jordan returns.
yeah.
And I think it's so incredible that we have Shuri, who she has that wonderful speech with her mom by the water right before Namor introduces herself, where, her mom wants her to burn her funeral clothes. It's been 1 year to the day since T'Challa passed away. And, this is part of the grieving process. This is the final step in grieving, that we're no longer grieving, we're no longer mourning. We burn our funeral clothes. And she says that if I start to think of him, or if I do this, I'm not just going to burn my clothes, I'm going to burn the world down. And that really echoes where Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger was in the first film, where he just wanted to burn the world down. So I thought it was so fitting that Shuri, who is so full of rage and anger in this film, who shows up to her when she takes the heart-shaped herb? It's Killmonger, which is pretty substantial. Camille.
Yeah. I mean, firstly, Ryan, round of applause for bringing in what the fans, because after we learned about what happened with Chadwick, there was this huge discussion with fans of, do we, the decision was from the MCU, they're not going to recast the Black Panther. Fans were kind of upset because of what that mantle stands for, right? In the community, and what that movie has done for the Black community. So discussions of who would be the next Black Panther, and we loved Michael B. Jordan's performance in the first film, and that I completely forgot that I wanted to see Michael B. Jordan, because Ryan just did an amazing job of getting you engaged with just what's happening on the screen, that when he appeared, I was like, oh snap, like they brought him back for this. And yes, he is so rage-filled, Dan. Like it's interesting to learn that he has not learned, like, because we don't know what this like what
Ancestral plane.
Yes, the ancestral plane, what this means for the people in it, right? Are they growing from when we pass, like when we've seen them lastly, when they were alive?
Or is it a construct too,
or is it
right?
a construct, right? Because I really do feel like this is probably a construct, because at the end of the Black Panther movie, I would have thought that Killmonger was in a more settled place based on his discussion with the Black Panther when they're sitting up on that hill. So it kind of gave me the vibe that this is definitely a construct, and this is more of a Killmonger that Shuri sees, rather than if this was, T'Challa still alive and he goes to the ancestral plane and sees Killmonger. He's not going to see this Killmonger. He's going to remember the Killmonger that he saw when he was like his last breaths, right? So it's very interesting that Shuri and probably the other people in Wakanda still see Killmonger in this light, which is unfortunate, because I feel like at the end of Black Panther, we kind of got a little bit of a redemption from him.
Right. And it's so cool when you see her like raising out of the water. She's wearing those funeral clothes that she refused to burn while everything else is burning around her. And then she's leaving the water, and then she's not wet at all. I'm like, oh, that's such a cool look. But I was scared. I'm like, okay, like who is she going to see? And then obviously we get the payoff at the final battle that yes, she did end up seeing her mom afterwards, where she was kind of coming in and out, and her mom saying like, show him who you are. But I thought it was so profound for her to see Killmonger and to be kind of faced with that fear of like, am I going to give in to my rage? And and he poses the question, are you going to be noble like your brother, or are you going to get shit done like me? And I thought that was really cool. Shay, what do you think of that moment?
I kind of I didn't expect it. Did I want to see this to happen? Absolutely. When it did happen, it was that shell shock of, well, kind of like what you guys said. Are we going to see a progression in this character's, life? Are they going to be smarter and wiser? And in some ways, I think Michael B. Jordan's, Killmonger was a little, he did have some character progression in that moment. But how they actually paid it off was beautiful. I mean, I know that the second time we got to watch it, the crowd completely popped off for it. Like, it was one of the most insane moments. It was like Tobey Maguire showing up, Andrew Garfield showing up. This was Michael B. Jordan, who in my opinion, is still one of the best villains that we've gotten in the MCU. Not only because of how Killmonger is, but because of his performance. And in that short 2-minute sequence, you're immediately reminded why he's the best and why he's so damn good. And I hope this means that we maybe see him down the road again in some sort of ancestral plane sequence, because why not? I mean, Killmonger's a badass, and Michael B. Jordan is not a bad person to look at. I'll be honest.
He's not. I liked his look in this too. He looked really cool in this.
Yeah,
Like, damn.
I love the sweater.
Yeah.
It was very like Knives Out
Yeah.
2 or Knives Out. I'm down for it.
It's that knit sweater.
Yeah.
Anthony, how about yourself?
Yeah, it was very fitting to see him because up to that point, we have Shuri who's lost her brother as well as lost her mother. So there's a lot of like anger that she's gone through, and there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of like stress on the heart. So I think she remembers, and you were talking about what plane. I think this is more of a construct of you physically, like your presence at that moment. So when you go into this other plane, it's what you really feel. And because she feels so angry, and what she knows of Michael B. Jordan
Killmonger. Yeah.
and being a vengeful person, that's what she kind of relates to. She doesn't know that he was he was kindness at heart at the end, we'll say. So it's really interesting that they chose it. I think Michael B. Jordan's fantastic as Killmonger. He brings a certain level of good guy, bad guy. I really empathize with your situation, but I can't let you do these things. And I understand, why he was chosen. Because if we saw the mother, it would have been too soon. I mean,
Right.
clearly we're not going to see her brother. So Ryan
Thank God, yeah.
pulled it.
Not that they would do like a CG
Right.
thing, but yeah.
So Brian being there, Brian pulling Killmonger and making him her person for this situation worked so well, and overcoming that at the end.
It's true.
I think
Camille.
it also speaks to, her burning that garment at the end. She wasn't ready to meet the new T'Challa
Right.
Jr. She wasn't ready to meet him because I think this movie is also about not passing grief to others, that like not passing revenge. I guess it's not like grief, revenge to others, because when you look at the movie, I'm going to say it, but Queen Ramonda kind of did. And it did lead to a harder time for Wakanda. When she fired Okoye because Shuri got lost, she was kind of going on a rampage, and very much so, I understand, right? But as a leader, I think that clouded her judgment because she decided to go right to war with Namor and his people. And that obviously led to this rebellion and them coming back into Wakanda and all that stuff. And it spiraled out of hand. Shuri, if she did kill Namor at that point, it would have spiraled even further, and there might not have been a Wakanda to talk about right now, right? So
Right.
I think it does, Shuri was able to do something that her mother wasn't quite able to get out of. Her mother, it's interesting, like her mother was talking about handling grief and being able to kind of see the light and remember and live on that legacy. And even though she tried to do it, and she was doing it for that year, the loss of her, or the thought loss of her daughter, and being completely vulnerable and not having that family near her, kind of led her back into a state that she found Shuri at the beginning of the movie. So it was really interesting how they kind of echoed these emotions through those two characters, a mother-daughter journey.
I love that. One last thing that I did notice, and I thought it was really cool. I mentioned Iron Man 2 earlier. Similar sequence of like in Iron Man 2, Iron Man or Tony trying to figure out like how can I save myself and create whatever metal or whatever, like I guess element I need for my arc reactor. We get a very similar sequence with Shuri again trying to find whatever DNA sequence could work to recreate the heart-shaped herb. And it's actually Namor who unintentionally, maybe we'll find out later, is the one who gives her the bracelet that has the the vibranium rich, like it was grown in vibranium rich soils that she was able to look at and analyze, which ended up making her being able to recreate that. And it's really cool. There's a sequence where you see on Shuri's arm, she has like a DNA like sequence on her arm, a tattoo. And shout out to New Rockstars for this when I was watching their breakdown. But it's cool because like you see her wearing the bracelet that Namor gave her with the DNA sequence, I guess, that she wasn't able to solve. But together they show that it's like the complete DNA and the complete kind of formula that she needs. I'm like, damn, that's such like clever, just use of like her tattoo and then the prop of the bracelet. I thought that was really cool.
Do we think she's a mutant now? That's my question, because if she got this from Namor and we know that he is a mutant, it was this plant, we still don't understand fully what happens to classify you as a mutant in the MCU. But we know with Kamala Khan, she already had that DNA somewhere, and then it got triggered by the bracelets that she wore, right? So I feel like maybe Shuri's a mutant now. I don't know. Is anyone that eats the heart-shaped fruit in the future potentially mutant? Because now this is the same strain. This is like an evolution of that strain that Namor had, right?
Yeah, it's possible. There's so many ways it could go. And again, like it's sneaky how much this film like brings into it that we could dissect and go, I think, on for another hour about it. Camille, thank you so much for joining us on our discussion today. We've spoken a lot about this movie, and I'm sure we could talk a lot more about it. But for the three of us, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Any other final thoughts on this film before we wrap up?
I didn't expect them to kill Angela Bassett, man. That's it. That's my last thing.
God, yeah.
Last thing I wanted to say, like, wow, this movie came for the 1-2 punch and it left me floored.
Yeah.
It really did.
A complete knockout. Watch the movie, please. Please.
Camille, where can our audience find you if they want to follow you on Instagram, on Twitter, not in real life, just on social media, please?
Don't lurk in real life, but you could lurk online. Find me at This Is Camco everywhere.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And as always, you can catch a brand new episode of the Movie Podcast every single Monday, and watch out throughout the week for reviews and interviews on all the latest movies and series. Later this week, we will have the cast of Mythic Quest joining us. We're talking about season 3, and we'll have some reviews later for this for everything coming out this week as well too. So stay tuned for all of that. And of course, make sure you're following us at the Movie Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Letterboxd. Join us on YouTube, and make sure you join our Discord. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.